You're listening to The Whole Truth, a Resources Rising Stars podcast.
Welcome to the next edition of The Whole Truth podcast. I'm Paul Armstrong. I've just had a chat with Ley Kingdom. She's the recently appointed Chief Executive of Eastern Metals. Eastern who, I hear you say? That's not surprising. The company hasn't been on the front foot. It hasn't been marketing. And you're probably not even going to be aware of the fact that the company has 3 projects in Australia, one of which has a resource, another an exploration target. It aims to put out a maiden resource on the Browns Reef project in the heart of the world-class Cobar Basin next year. It has extensive known mineralisation, and yet the market cap of the whole company is $2.5 million. This is a massively leveraged opportunity. There are shelf companies on the ASX worth more than this, and yet the company has extensive mineralisation, drilling programs, and it's really starting to get itself moving. Ley Kingdom is a geologist. She doesn't bother with too much spin and style. She's into the substance of it. She's been lured to the job by the attraction of what they've already got, the potential, and the low market cap. Ley is based in Queensland, and I've been working from my home base due to COVID. So as a result, this episode of the Whole Truth podcast has been done remotely by all parties. Hence, it probably sounds a little bit different. And the other reason it sounds a little bit different is because I'm bearing the signs of the after effects of COVID. So if you can overcome those two things, I think you'll find this episode to be well worthwhile. Ley Kingdom, why did you take this job at Eastern Metals? It's a $2.5 million company. Where do you see the upside here?
Well, I think it's because the company has 2 advanced exploration projects as defined by the Valman Code. That's the home of Bullion in the Northern Territory and Browns Reef in New South Wales in the southern Cobar Basin. So, and also it's also got a greenfields project in the underexplored Thompson Origin area in northern New South Wales. So it's got the best of both worlds. In that you can add value to the company by increasing the JORC resources, that home of Bullion has, and also acquiring one by doing some more drilling at Browns Reef. So having those dollars in the ground, I think, is quite important. So, and yeah, it does have a small market cap, but that's a reflection of the small number of shares that are currently on issue, which is only about 82.5 million. So there's plenty of upside there, I think.
So what you're saying is that the market cap doesn't really reflect even closely what's in the ground. You know, you have mineralisation. So as a geologist yourself, you obviously see the ability or the potential to grow that mineralisation and add value. That's
exactly right. At home of Bullion, we've got 3.1 million tonnes of 2.9% copper equivalent. And also with Browns Reef, Kidman Resources, who had the asset before us, before it was acquired by Wesfarmers, actually, they came up with a sort of an exploration target in the region of about 30 million tonnes. So yeah, the current market cap doesn't reflect the value of the company at all, in my view.
No, there would seem to be a big disconnect. Let's look at those projects in isolation, though, Ley. Perhaps that will help investors get a handle on what it is that you're actually offering. So the what you call the Browns Reef project, that's the flagship project, isn't it? Sits within, it's a subset of the wider Cobar project in New South Wales. Now, it's a zinc, silver, lead, copper deposit. Cobar Basin's obviously got a big reputation. It's a world-class region. And I noticed that you said that you hope to get a maiden JORC resource for Browns Reef out sometime later this financial year. So take us through what it is Browns Reef about and why has it got such a reputation in Cobar Basin?
Yeah, Browns Reef was originally discovered back in the 18th century. I believe a shaft was put down, probably for gold at the time. And ever since then, it's probably a lot of work's been done on the Browns Reef over the years. And probably most of that's sort of been in the last 50 or so years. And I believe that Kidman had the full intention of developing it, but Kidman was acquired by Wesfarmers back in 2019, and with a view to sort of acquiring the Mount Holland lithium mine in Western Australia. So Wesfarmers subsequently divested the Browns Reef asset and home of Bullion asset in the Northern Territory. But the Cobar Basin, there's a lot of companies that are operating in that part of the world, and there's quite a bit of activity. And like the Mount Isa and Kalgoorlie regions, there is scope for consolidation. So yeah.
Before we move into the consolidation phase, what is it that you think that you plan to do, Ley, at Browns Reef over the next 3 to 6 months that will add value for shareholders?
Yeah, that's going to be our main focus in the next 3 to 6 months, along with the Thompson Project, which I'll talk about later. But we're looking to start drilling in the first quarter of 2024 with a view of coming up with a maiden JORC resource. So that's where our efforts and time are focused at the moment. So at the moment, we're doing refining the geological model and getting a few ducks lined up. We do have approvals from the government to start drilling, so those regulatory approvals are in place. It's just a matter now of consolidating the information that we do have and making sure that we get the best bang from our buck with the drilling program early next year.
Now, you mentioned consolidation, Ley. Do you envisage Browns Reef being a standalone operation, or do you think that it'll be part of a wider regional play, or perhaps both?
Potentially both. There are companies in the region that are producing, and I know Kingston Resources are recommissioning their flotation plant. So they're within 100 kilometres of Browns Reef. And there's also Aurelia, who've got the Federation mine further north. So we are within, strategically, we're in a great location for potentially an acquisition by a company that does have the infrastructure in place, or failing that, either that or we could potentially build our own plant,
So either way, the name of the game is to identify and grow an inventory, isn't it? What you do with that, well, you've got the luxury of deciding that once you've got it on the table.
Yes, and that'll depend on a number of things, on the base metal prices, as you know. So there is scope there. I mean, Browns Reef has got about 2.7 kilometre strike length, so it's got scale. So it could potentially go either way: be acquired by a producing company or be a standalone.
So on that strike length, Ley, are you planning, with this drilling that you just mentioned, are you planning to drill it out along strike, or is it really infill drilling to get to the resource statement? With
this round of drilling early next year, we're going to be focusing on Evergreen, which is the high-grade zone in the northern part of Browns Reef. And once the drilling program's completed and we're sort of putting all that data into getting a JORC resource, we'll also start planning on drilling down at Pineview. So at the moment, there are sort of the Evergreen high-grade zone to the north and the Pineview high-grade zone to the south. So geologically, we need to sort of get a better understanding of what's happening in between. There is mineralisation there, but it's a lower grade. So we're just going to focus on the two high-grade zones for the interim.
And to lead to the JORC resource.
That's right, yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned, Ley, the Runter project in the Northern Territory. Isn't this the curiously named project? It's called the home of Bullion, but it's actually a copper project.
That's right, yes.
It's a rather interesting twist there. How does it come to be a home of Bullion when it's copper?
There's gold there as well. So I imagine, like many mines or deposits, they were originally discovered by anomalous gold.
Okay, so that's the name, right? So how do you see a Runter playing out for you?
Again, that's something that we'd like to add we'd like to add onto the JORC resource. So Eastern Metals last year added another 30% to 3.1 million tonnes, or about 2.9% copper equivalent. And I guess the idea there is just to keep building on that.
And is there scope for growth? I mean, do you have targets? Is the mineralisation open?
Yes, it is. It is open along strike and at depth. So it's certainly got a lot of potential.
So what's the plan in a drilling sense?
We're doing, following the drilling at Browns Reef, we're looking to do some field work and do an assessment of some of the highly ranked prospects in that area, along with home Bullion in the second quarter of next year.
So you've got two projects. Now, we've sort of jumped from Cobar and New South Wales to Runter and Northern Territory, but going back to Cobar and Browns Reef, you have the Thompson Project. That's an earlier stage project, isn't it? But it could give you growth upside there as well.
That's right. I'm quite excited about the Thompson Project because there is the potential for a big scale mineralised system. So that essentially Browns Reef and Thompson are sort of the two main focuses for us in the next 3 to 6 months. We're looking to get a JV partner to put some holes into 3 identified high priority anomalies. And with that, we'll just see what's there. But there has been some drilling in the past into those anomalies, which came up with mineralised assay results, but they weren't quite deep enough and they didn't quite hit the target. The difficulty with exploring in that part of the world is you've got cover of the Eromanga Basin. So whilst you can get a geophysical signature, it's difficult to get a clear view on what's happening geochemically because the Eromanga Basin sediments are a lot younger. But the drill holes that have been drilled down into the basement do show promising results. So, and I guess I get a bit of a backstory behind Thompson as well, is these anomalies were carefully selected by Bob Richardson, who's the principal consultant for geophysics. And his father actually was a pioneer for exploration geophysics in Australia back in the 1930s and 1940s. So it's got a bit of an interesting background. So I'm really keen to get some holes into some of those targets. Well, 3 of those targets.
It sounds like it's got huge potential, isn't it? It's one of those projects that it's not really tailor-made for a small company, is it? Even though the size of the prize is potentially very big. Hence, you're looking for a JV partner, I take it.
That's exactly right. And, we need to focus our funds into getting a JORC resource for Browns Reef, and drilling deep holes up in the Thompson origin is just not within our. Whilst we're keen to do it, we just don't have the funds to do it. And, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm a big believer in the beauty of constraints, and having a small budget does tend to sort of focus your time and efforts more. But, seeking a JV partner who have the funds to put some holes into those anomalies would be great.
It does make perfect sense to try and farm out some of these things like Thompson, where you see a lot of small companies lead trying to hold on to everything. As you say, the reality is small companies these days just don't have the budgets. Exploration with geophysics and deep drilling is very expensive. Capital's tight, the markets are tight, and trying to explore some of these big, potentially enormous fields, very expensive, not tailor-made for a small company like Eastern, but ultimately you're better off to have a share of a major discovery than 100% of a prospect.
I agree. That's exactly right. So that's the strategy around getting a JV partner to put some holes in, deep holes. Yeah, it's and
you can get on with your other work at Browns Reef and establishing the resource. So you're really trying to craft your strategy, cut your cloth to suit, as they say, so that you say, right, this is what we can realistically afford to do. This is the best way to make money for shareholders. And if our JV partner comes along with deep pockets and deep holes, they tend to go hand in hand, then you've got the potential to have a big discovery and you've got a share of that. So happy days.
That's exactly right, Paul. You've nailed it. Yep.
Now, when you look back at that market cap, as I said earlier, there does seem to be a whopping disconnect here. I mean, is it partly because you think the company's been almost, particularly in a marketing sense, quasi-dormant? I mean, Browns Reef came out of, as you say, the Kidman stable. They had the enormous success with the lithium discovery, the West Farmers takeout, and it's just not really had the attention that it probably warrants.
No, I agree. I think it does warrant a lot more attention, but also too, I mean, the market is extremely tough at the moment, and there are companies out there who are putting out announcements with fantastic results, and yet their share price is going nowhere, and in some cases it can go down. So it is pretty tough. So I do think that Eastern Metals, along with many other exploration companies and juniors, they're highly undervalued, and they're going pretty cheap at the moment. So I think it's a good time to get in. I'm optimistic about the resources sector in general. I think you have to be, but I mean, we could see a similar thing happening post GFC, where the resources sector in Australia took off. So that's what I'm thinking. At some stage, things happen in cycles, and we're pretty much at the bottom at the moment, and things are going to start turning at some stage. They always do. It never feels like at the time, but they do.
You're right when you talk about some of these great results not really getting a market response, but equally, if you get good results in New South Wales, particularly some of the metals you're talking about, and are in a world-class region like the Cobar Basin, the market will love it. I mean, if the results are good and they're in Australia, particularly when you're talking about the likes of zinc and copper, the market's going to love it. There's no question about that. I don't think you'll see good results overlooked in that case, but your point is valid. There are a lot of other sort of better results that for one reason or another the market is not grabbing hold of. So you do have to have the right sort of results and in the right places. You've certainly got the right address. Copper and zinc in Australia is in hot demand. There's no denying that. And if you were to generate some good results out of Browns Reef or Thompson's, I suspect the market will be all over you. And the leverage at your market cap is absolutely enormous.
That's right, and I do think we have had good results. We've got zinc grades up around 4%, 5%, 6%. So the results to date have shown that there is something there, and it's of quality. And we just need to get a maiden JORC resource happening.
Yeah, right. Well, Ley, look, thank you very much for your time today. It's a real ground floor opportunity in the sense that the market cap is just so low. There's shelf companies out there that have got higher market caps than Eastern, and yet you've got, a resource at one project, an exploration target. You're about to put a maiden resource out early next year on Browns Reef. You've got drilling and action going on there. Who knows what might happen at Thompson's once you bring a JV partner in. It's sort of you never want to say it, but you'd have to think the only way is up. It's just a question of how and when.
That's exactly right, and that's what I'm hoping for. It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. Yeah.
Great. Well, we'll wish you all the best for it. We'll follow it closely. Thanks again.
Thank you for your time. Thanks, Paul.
You've been listening to The Whole Truth, a Resources Rising Stars podcast, produced by Resource Media, hosted by Paul Armstrong for Reed Corporate. Please note that Reed Corporate does not provide investment advice, and investors should seek personalised advice before making any investment decisions.